Welcome back to another episode of Winning the Moment. This is episode 11. I've got a good friend of mine with me today, Robert MacFarlane. He is a local realtor and also another podcast host. So you can check his podcast on the 435 podcast. Today, we actually just put on our headphones and started like right out the gate. So it's filled with information. We went a little bit long, but you're going to love every single bit of it. We've got religion, we've got politics, all the things that drive intrigue. So make sure you click subscribe and enjoy the episode.
Power corrupts absolutely. Right?
Yeah.
You've heard that, but
Yeah.
do you believe that?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, dude, they did that study. Are you recording now?
You can roll whenever,
Yeah,
Mal.
I'm
You know how I go.
So they did a study with students where, and this is at Harvard or Stanford, one of those schools. And so they took these students and they said,
Those are two totally different schools, by the way.
same concept though.
Kind of. You're
Ivy
saying
League.
Ivy League.
Yeah.
We got to look that up.
I think
Mal,
it was
look that up.
Harvard
Just kidding.
because I'm pretty sure it was in the Northeast.
Okay.
And so they took these students and they said, okay, we are going to do an experiment, a social experiment. There's 20 of you, 10 of you are going to be guards, 10 of you are going to be prisoners.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
I've heard this one. I've heard this one.
And so
I've heard this one.
the 10 people who became guards ended up like treating the prisoners so poorly.
They turned into
like
Nazis.
physical
dude. Like,
and mental abuse. Like these, where the school had to be like, whoa.
yeah, they pitted each other
Yeah.
against
Yeah.
themselves.
Like this is over.
yeah.
It's getting dangerous. Like, and that is like the easiest example of what power can do because it wasn't even real power. It was perceived power.
Yeah.
It was an experiment. It wasn't even real. Like those 10 people weren't even
Like,
actually.
you know you're in a thing. You're just like
They weren't actually bad people. I could understand how like a real prison guard working with like terrible people might treat them terribly, right? But these are just peers, and they just said, "Hey, you're a guard and you're a prisoner."
Let's look at it. Let's take a step back though and say, okay, you see one study that proves that, right? Or that validates that argument.
Sure.
This is why I love Malcolm Gladwell. It's my favorite writer, dude, because
He's my favorite author too.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
So this goes all the way back to college.
Did you go to college?
Yeah, I went to Cal State Fullerton.
Whoa.
I was a political science major.
I knew you were smart, dude.
I don't even know if that's even a thing. Like Cal State Fullerton, I was a political science major in a mediocre, like
Political
it'd be
science major sounds pretty dope, though.
It does. I guess it
Yeah.
does. To some people,
Like, if you
other
say that,
people
it's
are
like,
like,
"Oh shoot,
what's that?
man, impressive."
Political science. I don't know the validity of political science majors. I think going back to what we first started talking about though, like what is the goal of the podcast? You know, controlling media. We know power corrupts absolutely. I believe that power corrupts absolutely. So you give somebody an avenue to say, I'm the only source of news for, let's say, 70 to 80% of the population.
Yeah.
And I get to control that as one human gets to control everything that's being said. Where's that power lie? And that's with the mob, right? And so like if you do like political science, you're going to go through a political ideology class where all the different political ideologies along the spectrum, far left into the center, all the way to the far right.
Okay.
Right? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's different classes, different writers throughout history that have written about social class structure and how to govern the masses, right? So Hobbes is the Leviathan, right? You're an absolute monarch.
Okay.
And he describes the social structure within that political ideology,
Okay.
which is different than a theology, right? So you have theologies that run governments, right? Where it's actual, scriptural writings delivered by
What would be
deity,
an example of that?
like an Islamic state.
Okay.
Early in the United States history, you could make an argument that it began under the tenets of Christianity.
Yeah, that's true.
So where it's divinely projected
Yeah.
is where we split off. Like we have this moment in time, and it's not written anywhere specifically, but the divide between church and state.
Well, yeah, because under God, right? Let's start
One nation under
Yeah.
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So that's the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
But if you say Pledge of Allegiance, but you're talking about an evil empire, it sounds so weird. And when you're a
Or a
kid,
cult.
yeah, it's a cult thing, dude.
Yeah,
I can't help but think we were at the commissioners meeting, and we're in the commissioners meeting saying the pledge, and we start with a prayer.
Yeah, the prayer part's weird.
I don't think it's weird
I do.
because I'm a Christian. I'm Jesus is my homeboy, dude. Like, I'm a Christian. I follow Jesus. Like, if I was to say there was a government that I follow, it's because I live here, because I'm a part
but you
of this
follow
culture.
Jesus, but what about the people in the room that don't?
Exactly. Right?
Because we're all American. If you're in that room,
so if you
pledging
go
allegiance
there,
to the flag, we can. Well, that's like we're united under that. But to say a prayer, certainly everyone in the room is united under that prayer. Right?
That's a good point. So where do you draw the line between theology as a political, like, church and state? Where do we divide this line? And that's super fascinating to me, right? Because I feel comfortable in this environment because I'm in the culture where that's the dominating belief system. So I feel fine with it, but I couldn't help but think about how interesting that is.
Yeah, it was weird for me moving from Wyoming. In fact,
so like in the prayer, if you're an atheist, you just like sit there in silence and not be thinking about anything or how odd this is.
Not knowing.
And then the Christians in the room, when we're saying the pledge, we're thinking like, this is so odd to us. And the anarchists are in there like, yeah, this is about right. I feel better here.
I can remember like moving from Wyoming and like having prayers, like going to a friend's house and they'd like prayer before dinner or whatever. It's like, whoa, this is weird. Or even like in basketball, like in the locker room, we'd pray. And I thought, well, this is weird. And I remember thinking like, well, I don't know where to put my hands because this is what I thought of praying, but everyone does this.
Well, Mormons do this.
Yeah. Everyone here is what I mean.
Yeah, Mormons
do this and they just like look down. I thought, well, that's easy.
It's not everybody here. I don't do this.
It's easy enough.
This one's comfortable though.
Yeah.
My hands are cold right now, so it feels good.
I can just look down and like just basically not be a part of it for the next 15 seconds.
I think you should... Dude, if you go to somebody's house and we pray before dinner, you should stand up and just have a pose, dude, like you're freaking Peter Pan. And be like, oh, that's how I pray.
It was interesting talking about, I don't know, we keep talking about religion on my podcast. I don't know why.
Because God's real.
Just keeps happening.
Because God's real. Because God's real. Jesus is real.
So are you LDS or like when you say you're Christian, in what way?
I'm not LDS.
Okay.
I'm
LDS, for people who are listening
Christian.
and don't know, is Mormonism.
Latter-day Saints. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah. So you're not that.
I'm not that.
Just Christian.
Jesus is the savior of the world, bro.
So we had this. So I'll tell you an interesting story. So I just recently given a talk at Utah Tech University to the staff and faculty. I practiced the talk in front of my wife and kids, and then they came to the talk. And in my talk, I said, the universe wants whatever you want. Like, the universe wants to give you everything that you want for yourself, as long as your actions align with what you say you want, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm talking about that. I'm in the kitchen. I'm talking to Megan about it. And my son, who's 7, and there's no religion spoken about in our household. My son, who's 7, goes, that's not the universe, Dad. I said, well, then what is it? He goes, that's God. And I said, well, why do you think that? He's like, because that's what it is. I was like, well, okay, well, that's fine. I was like, I don't actually disagree with you. I think I'm using the term universe, but I think it's interchangeable with whatever you believe. I said, so if for you it's God, then that's cool. And he goes, well, it is God. And it was like,
he was like, no,
yeah.
Dad.
And he was like, you dumbass, telling all these people that it's the universe.
You're confusing people.
Yeah. It was so interesting because I don't
7,
know.
First grade.
I don't know where that came from. Like, it is not, it's not coming from me, obviously, because I
when was this?
This was like 2 weeks ago.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's not the terminology I use. So I was telling Eli, my barber, who loves like all of that realm. He is the guest before you, about that. And I had said the phrase, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And he goes, I heard an interesting quote that says, that's like saying, I like music, I just don't listen to it. And I was like, damn.
A great analogy.
Shit. Like, I can't say that anymore, And so we got into it. And it was just really interesting because
isn't it weird how God puts you in a position where you can't deny him? That's written in scripture too, by the way. He will not allow you to not deny
because
him.
Of what my son said.
Because he's going to create the environment in the world that makes you understand what truth is. So you're going to be hit with it in these ways where you're like, well, shoot, I can't say that anymore. So what's my other excuse?
Yeah, right. No, it was interesting. And it's just the universe. And that really comes from like the alchemists and things like that. That's kind of what spurred that belief for me. Yeah, it's such a great book.
Love that book.
Right. And so that's really how I live my life. And then he said that and I was like, damn, that's so interesting. And for me, the reason I'll tell you why I'd say that I'm not religious, where I struggle is saying that there's like this one truth. Because if you believe what you believe, then that would inherently have to mean that everything else is not right.
Okay.
Right. And so that's where I struggle to say that, oh yeah, well, I'm this thing. So like if let's just say I'm Christian, then like the Buddhists, like, I don't know what they're doing, but they're doing it wrong.
Okay.
And so I have a hard time saying they're doing it wrong because I think they're doing great things. So it's like, I don't really want to prescribe to any one belief because I don't want to shut myself off to the possibility of all the things that are out there.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to this other thing that you said.
Okay.
You said based off The Alchemist I
believe in the universe.
You believe in the universe though, and that, the universe wants what you want.
Yeah.
And you know the study on electrons, right?
I don't know.
How if you shoot electrons and you take a photo of it, right? And it at one point it splits, okay? And it disappears. So when you're looking at it, it disappears.
Okay.
When you don't look at it and then you measure it as it goes past, you don't look at it, but you're measuring it passing through an object.
Okay.
It passes through the object.
Okay.
But when you're watching it, you can't see it.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Like what we're looking at and what's really happening
are not the same things.
They're not the same things. So the idea though that the universe wants what you want is that you are going to create reality one way or another. You're going to create a truth. Everybody's truth is real.
Yeah.
But what does that ultimately do to your life, and what is the outcome of that life?
Well, I think that the universe, like, let's say a perfect example, just going back to that speaking thing. So I said, I want to be a speaker. This is what I want to do. Then I get asked to be a speaker. And my gut reaction was like, oh no, I'm not ready. I don't want to do that, And if you're listening, go to YouTube, you can watch the talk. But so I wanted to say no, because it was like in front of 300 up to 350 people. And it was like this really big event. And it was like, oh no, I've not even done it yet. I can't do it. But then I thought to myself, like, man, this is the universe. I'm saying I want to do this thing. The universe provides me an opportunity, and the universe is going to watch how I respond to that opportunity. So if I say no, the universe is like, oh, okay, chill. Cody doesn't actually want to be a speaker, so let's make sure we put some energy to someone who does.
Yeah.
Right? Like that, he's just talking. He doesn't actually want it. And so I think when you continually show up and become the person you want to be, the universe is going to keep putting those opportunities in front of you, because I think that the universe, and again, you can interchange it with whatever word you want, the universe wants you to have the life that you want for yourself, but your actions have to align with those thoughts and beliefs.
Yeah. If you want to become an evil dictator, or so what happens when people become an evil dictator?
Yeah,
do you think people start out wanting to be an evil dictator, or
I don't know. Did Hitler want to be an evil dictator, or did he just want ultimate power?
So when he set out like this journey, the very first step, I want to do this thing and I'm not ready, right? So his first thing is this. I would argue. I mean, so it's either you're focusing on what you want or not.
Yeah.
Right. But it'd be curious to see who you could sit down here and be like, hey, are you thinking about what you're doing on a daily basis? Or are you just like letting life happen to you? It sounded like your dad was just letting life happen to him, bro. Holy shit.
And that's why I ended up nowhere.
That's why you ended up?
No, that's why he ended up nowhere. He never, like, just things happen.
Dude, it sounded like he had a great life.
I mean, life is great, but he had all these times where he would just hit dead roadblocks.
Yeah, but I think that happens with anybody, right?
I mean, I think that had he been more intentional with his life, he would have had a different life.
But what do you wanted one?
I don't know. And that's fine. That's the thing, is everyone gets to decide for themselves. Like, he didn't want to have structure or purpose necessarily. He just wanted to show up every day and do whatever he was doing, right? And so I don't think that, and that's what I love about winning the moment, is you do get to define it for yourself. So like, my dad's life is not the life that I want for myself, but that's what he wanted. And so in that sense, he was successful for himself.
Yeah.
That would not be my success.
Yeah.
Like, I would be disappointed if I took that path. He was not. He was stoked. And so if he's happy, I'm happy. Yeah. But to go back to like, I think it's good when you have a question and then you take it to like the most extreme, right? It's like my wife will say something and be like, yeah, well, I just think that everyone like gets to choose their life. And I'm like, oh, so you think people choose to be murderers? She's like, well, that's not what I'm talking about. I was like, well, it is, So I think your question of, do evil people set out to be evil? I think that's...
So why is evil in the world? Why do people end up that way?
Because I think you got to have good and bad. There's always going to be polarity. You know what I mean? Like, if everything was good, we'd lose the appreciation for good things. Amen. Like, unfortunately, bad things have to happen so we can appreciate the good times.
Amen.
So I think that you're always going to have that. And I think that, if you're talking about Hitler, this evil person, I do believe he wanted to do these evil things, and he pursued those evil things with an immense passion, and therefore he was incredibly successful at being evil. Right? I think the universe doesn't dictate for us what we should and shouldn't do. They just say, what do you want? And if all of your actions align with that, then the path is going to be created.
So here's probably the one difference, and maybe you'll be like, maybe Rob wasn't the best person to have on winning the moment, but we'll see.
This is great.
So what I would say is that I have a hard time with like the hustle and the motivation type. It's like this cultural wave of like
the hustle culture, like the side hustle. Like I'd be grinding 18 hours a day.
Well, and then also like motivation, like figure out how to like really, motivate yourself to go out and be the very best that you could be, right? Like this, be all that you could be in the army, right? Like this, in a way, it's almost propaganda to a bit.
Sure.
And I would only say because it centers around someone's self, right? It's like, I need to, for myself, win in this moment. That's true, but why are you winning in that moment?
Well, I think that's what's so great about it.
What's the fundamental belief?
Is you get to decide that. So let's say you want to be the best dad you can be,
right?
And all of your wins are centered around being present for your children,
right?
Right. I'm not saying you need to have this professional success or this monetary success or this material success. What I am saying is,
so then
it starts with your definition.
So stepping back, because this separates you from what's classic as what I know of, like this common scroll thing that I run into all the time, right? Whether it's YouTube or Instagram or wherever. But the reason I have that problem is because I got caught up in it myself, and I realized that it's not about, if I want to be the best father I can be, how do I do that? Spending the most time with them as possible. Yeah. And then there's a conflicting message in there of like, well, you got to go make money and you got to go buy boats and do all these trips and do all these amazing things. And for me, my actual capacity was not capable of doing all of the things and also being a great dad.
Yeah, for sure.
So when I was, my testimony of faith, as they say in the LDS community, but like my moment of conversion to being a follower of Jesus happened in 2020 in September.
Oh, so this is recent for you?
It's pretty recent, yeah.
Okay.
It ended up being, what's the purpose of the world? What's the purpose of everybody's? As we're kind of like virus. I think Matrix talks about humans as being a virus back in the day. Do you remember that?
Won't go away.
We just won't go away, and we consume and consume and consume. Yeah. Right? Greed, power corrupts absolutely. Yeah. Like this is what we do as humans. Yeah. So what's the great life? What's the perfect life? What's really success? Right? And if you go through the Bible, it teaches all of the scenarios that we've been in. The life that we're having right now is actually in the book of Corinthians. Okay? But if you even go back to the book of Kings or the book of Samuel in the Old Testament. So this tells of a time in the world that these things happen. So the book of Samuel is actually about King David. So have you heard of King David? So King David was this ultimate king. He had the greatest empire in the world, just like Alexander the Great.
King David's a real person.
King David is a real person.
Okay.
His palace currently was just excavated in Israel, like in 2017.
Okay.
So the Bible tells of this King David that nobody had archaeological evidence of. So
until recently.
Until 2017, where they found the actual his palace. So anyway, David and Goliath is a common story that people know of, right?
That's the same king.
Same king, David.
Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book, David versus Goliath.
He did, yeah. I've read it.
It's a great book.
It's a great book.
Mm-hmm.
So all that to be said, we've lived these lives before, right? The family we've had, the society that we have, the culture we have, the blue versus red or black versus white, or religious turmoil.
It's all cyclical.
It's all cyclical, right? We've had these lessons. The Bible tells the story of all these lessons too. Yeah. And then it leads to, okay, what does that perfect life look like? And for me, it was having a beautiful relationship with a female for my whole life, right? Yeah. One female my whole life, having kids that I could be proud of, watch them grow up, coach baseball. I loved coaching Little League baseball. But then I also was working like 60 hours a week and never home and barely spending any time with my wife and my kids, right? And so all that kind of culminated in 2020. And, you know, that book has really shaped a lot of the way I frame the world.
Did 2020 happen because it forced you home? And so then you realized what you were missing? Is that what happened?
I think I was working more.
Oh, really?
As a realtor in St. George, dude, it was nonstop, man.
That's true.
Like never unplugged. You know, agents make money by showing people homes, and people were buying and selling homes no matter
people
what.
Being driven here.
Yeah, they were
leaving the chaos.
Yeah.
Well, I think
crazy.
actually it's what makes you the perfect guest running the moment, because my whole premise is that you get to decide what's important to you.
Yeah.
And it's about moving those milestones every day towards the thing that you want for yourself. So like I say that winning the moment could work for that hustler who wants to be a millionaire and is going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and work for 20 hours a day. And that's going to keep him motivated. But could also be for that person who's got a bout of depression and hasn't gotten out of their bed in 3 days.
Yeah.
Because it's like that person who's stuck in their bed doesn't think that getting out of their bed is a big milestone. It's a fucking huge milestone.
Yeah.
So if they can get out of bed today and that's their first win of the day, it's like, okay, you know what? Like, I didn't think I'd get out of bed and I did. Now I'm going to brush my teeth.
Yeah.
And I haven't brushed my teeth in a week. I'm going to do it today, and I'm going to win. Because what people need in their life is momentum. And so there's this thing called the winner effect. And when you win, you get a dopamine and a testosterone hit in your brain, and your chemical reaction actually changes. So as you or any person starts to win, then you believe that you are more capable of winning in the future. The problem is that so many people define wins by society's definition. So they're never giving themselves credit, because they're like, well, yeah, I did this, but Jonathan did this.
Yeah.
And so because Jonathan's win is so grandiose, this thing I'm doing is really irrelevant and it's not a win. And so they're stopping that chemical reaction from taking place because they're not valuing it as a win. And so for me, the 10 decisions you make in a day are completely up to you.
The crazy thing, like, I love this idea. I love the point too, because everybody's win is different, right?
Yeah.
But the scale is so crazy. My friends are visiting here from California. I'm trying to get them to move here.
Yeah.
And their son is uber competitive. He's 5.
Yeah.
It's just built into him. You can tell that it was built in at a very young age. And then, you know, on the extreme spectrum is my son, who's 7. He's like completely unmotivated to do anything. Or he's always like, I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to go do this, and then this. He has ADHD like me. So it's just like bing, 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 bing around, where, you know, Wyatt's singularly focused. Like, I know exactly what it is to be the next winning mark. And as humans, we're the extreme scale.
When we're all on different parts of our race too, and of our journey, right? And I think that's what you talked about, like the scroll effect and what people are saying and doing. And the problem is that it's so easy to fall into the trap of like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to be, or oh, that's what success looks like. It's a boat and it's a house and it's a pool and it's all these things. And it's like, that may be what success looks like for that person. But also, you never know how someone else feels. So someone may have all of those things and you have envy of that person. Meanwhile, that person envies your simple life. Because they're like, God, I got to work 80 hours a week. I'm so sick of it. I don't want to do it anymore. Now I've created this lifestyle. So my kids, like, if I wanted to downsize, they would be unhappy. My wife would be unhappy.
Man.
Society would think I'm a failure just because I decided I don't want that anymore.
It's like a treadmill. You just get caught on the treadmill. You're like, oh, I can't stop. I got to keep running.
So in the beginning, if you were like, hey, you can have this job. It's going to pay you $700,000 a year. If you gave me that option when I was 18, I would have been like, okay, yeah, whatever. I'll do whatever.
Please tell me
how
what
much
to
do I work? 100 hours a week? No problem.
No problem.
You know? And then eventually I'd be like, this is the worst thing that ever happened to me. Yeah. And so you never know what you want, or you never know what comes with the thing that you think you want, right? And so I tell people, when you look at someone and you think like, oh, I wish they had what I wish I had what they have, you have to understand what they did to have that thing.
Yeah, their sacrifice.
And if you truly understood what it is that they did to have this thing, it may change your desire for that thing that they have. And so that took me a long time, because if you listen to my podcast with my dad, we didn't have a lot. Like, I had a great life. Obviously, this isn't to say I didn't, because I had a wonderful childhood. But there were material things and struggles that we went through. And so because my parents didn't have a great understanding of money, I grew an unhealthy habit with money. Right, and an unhealthy relationship with it.
Your dad started in college, man. He started gambling, and once he figured out people, it actually started in college when he got them to mail. He would mail in, and they'd give him $700, dude, and he'd take it and go gamble with it. Yeah. When he said that, I was like, oh yeah, see, the money thing was broken right out of the gate.
Oh yeah.
And so, like, as soon as...
Well, and losing his dad at 12, and then his mom struggled, and so, like...
Yeah. But the idea, though, that the world, you could find money. If you just looked around, you could find money anytime.
Yeah.
his concept is that he knew that money could be manipulated whenever he wanted it to.
Yeah,
so
he was never worried about it.
He never worried about it.
What's funny is
so he lived just a simple life on, not a whole lot of money, but he probably had some really badass times.
Yeah, I mean, he got great stories.
He's got great stories.
And that's why he's got this great life.
And you'll have great stories too, but you also have a stack of money too, probably.
And so he, what's funny is if you think back to that, like if you took a different mindset, he could have gotten that $700 for free and been like, I'm going to sell these things. I'm going to use this money to buy these things. I'll pay it back and I'll have all this profit. But instead he was like, nah, I'm going to go to Vegas and play.
The dopamine hit. The dopamine hit he was getting from winning was, and this is the funny thing with gambling. I've tried gambling a couple of times, and I've done overnight trips to Vegas, and we played craps.
Yeah.
My buddy taught us how to play craps. Oh, we'd go bowling, and we had what you did is you had one really good player.
But like real bowling.
Real bowling.
Okay.
One really good player, and then a bunch of crappy players. And then when you go to Vegas, you only compete within your own pool. So even though the game is going on, you're competing with a bunch of other people that aren't in the game with you.
Okay.
And then they rank, you get ranked, and there's a split of money for like the first 200 people, because there was like 3,000. There was like 3,000 people in this bowling tournament. So we go to Vegas, and my buddy James was the one who kind of like, he's like, hey, let's do this bowling league, and we can win the money for basically free beer for the whole year by going to this Vegas tournament one time.
Yeah.
And we did, and it truly happened. And then he also took me to the craps table, and he teach me how to play craps. And it was so much fun. And you put a little bit in your pocket. Your dad was talking about,
you got to
put something in your pocket.
Put it in your pocket.
So it was great. But if I get sat down at the blackjack table, I'd expect to win. Craps is fun because it's a game, right? Because there's like a lot of things
I've never
going.
played craps.
You can watch other people. Like if you don't have a lot of money, you could go put it on the table and keep playing and just watch other people win. And it's actually kind of fun. And then people are talking shit back and forth. And then you have people
I know
rolling
people
the
love it.
dice.
I've just never done it because I didn't understand it. And it's like, I'm not putting my money in something I don't get.
You almost have to have somebody who has played like with you at the table, pointing things out. And then everybody else kind of chimes in too. Other people will be like, oh, you could do this. Or, oh, hey, you won right here.
The people who do play that, those are the people who win the most money. That I know. From when they go play craps, like, oh yeah, I made like $1,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
When I play blackjack with Breck, I always am putting chips in my pocket, and he'll get pissed. He'll be like, don't be putting that in your pocket, because he's like looking at his stack and looking at mine, and so he feels like we're equal. And then we walk away from the table. He's like, oh man, I lost $200. What did you lose? I'm like, I'm up 300. He's like, God damn it.
You're better with numbers, clearly.
Oh, and I just know I got to put it away, because it's like out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
My goal is to, whatever I sat down at the table with, get that in my pocket as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So then it's like, now I really am just having fun.
Yeah. And so if I lose right out of the gate, I'm like, this is stupid. I'm getting out of here. Like I hated losing way more than I liked winning. When I won, I was like, well, I'm supposed to win, right?
Yeah.
Like, isn't this what the whole point is? So I'm supposed to win. And I never really got the dopamine hit that I hear when people get hooked on gambling.
Yeah.
But that one time playing craps was fun.
Yeah, gambling's fun. It's too fun for me. I got to stay away from it.
Oh, so you got it from your dad.
I know. One time I bet $10,000 over a weekend on football.
Yeah, dude, that's wild. Oh, I bet on the 2004 Yankees that lost to the Red Sox. They were up 3-1. I lost $200 to the shortstop of our high school team, him and his brother, and they were big Red Sox fans. And I was like the only Yankees fan, which it seems like I'm always the only Yankees fan. People are like, oh, you're a Yankees fan?
You're far enough away from New York that now they're just like hated because they were so good. Right?
Yeah, so everybody over here basically hates them. But I grew up watching Derek Jeter play, dude. It was just like he was rookie, the 1996. Like that just stoked it. And then I was in Little League. I was always a Yankee. Like I was on that track.
Oh,
like
sure.
The team that I was always on was always Yankees. So it just kind of fit together.
So baseball's your sport?
Yeah, baseball's my sport.
Are you excited about baseball coming to Vegas?
I'm pretty excited. I'm trying to figure out if it's going to be LA baseball or is it going to be,
What's LA baseball?
I'm curious about how the city's going to
I think the city's going to embrace the shit out of it. Look what they did at the Knights, Stanley Cup champs,
it's true.
And just right out the gate, like they're great now.
The Knights had an unfair advantage though, because they basically took draft picks early on, and then they basically had the cream of the crop because it was the only expansion team at the time.
Yeah.
So every team gave them something,
players,
and it was enough to sway for them to be good right out of the gate. So on that end, I'm like,
But
that's not going to happen.
Show up in a big way. Even with the Raiders, they suck, and And that place is awesome.
Yeah,
you know.
And I haven't been to the football stuff, but we'll see.
It's
I'm
great.
excited about it, and because they're in the American League, the Yankees will come to Vegas, and that'll be badass. So
well, and what's cool about it too is that, well, one, Vegas has more direct flights than anywhere in the world, and so what happens is all those Yankee fans, the one road game they'll go to will be the one in Vegas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That'll
So
be a
like
good
it
one,
will always be busy because all the fans from all over the United States will be like, oh, the Rays are playing in Vegas. Let's do a trip.
Yeah.
You know, so you've always got like this really raucous crowd and like a real nice disbursement of both teams. And so there's like that fun.
I'm
back
curious.
And forth.
I haven't looked all the way at the details of the stadium, but hopefully they do a little bit smaller of a stadium. I hope they don't try to get just freaking
I
massive.
know it's sad when you see baseball and it's like there's no one there.
Yeah, but then also like if you go to a Cubs game, because the stadium's small, it's old, but it's small and it's intimate. It feels like a college game. Because like you go to Angel Stadium, it's massive, dude. And you feel like you're at a mall, and there's also a game going on, right? Because it's so big.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, like the Raiders Stadium is kind of like that, where it's like so big that it feels
massive.
like it's massive.
But it fills up.
And so when you have all those people and you know that being loud is cool, I'm sure, for the athletes. As a spectator of baseball, I like hearing the crack of the bat. I like hearing the umpires calling safe or strike three.
Old school fan.
Like I like that. I want to be close to the game.
Have you ever? So you've been to Wrigley Field then? I take it.
Been to Wrigley. Yep.
Have you ever done the rooftop stuff?
Rooftop stuff, no. I've only been to Wrigley Field once. We just went with my son was like real little, but my wife and I went.
So I at a previous company, I won a work trip and we got to go to Wrigley Field and they took us. And so there's like these tall houses that are right outside of Wrigley Field. And they build stadium seating on top of them.
Yeah, right.
And it was amazing because like every floor was different and had all these themes and food and like beer and everything. Like it was like being at a stadium, but you're in this old school house. And then we sat in stadium seats across the street. But like to your point, the stadium's pretty small.
Yeah.
So it felt like I was in the ballpark.
Yeah.
But
then the train goes between them too.
Yeah,
right?
but I'm actually on a roof.
I think it's right field, isn't it?
Yes, that's right field.
It's in
yeah.
right field.
It was one of the coolest things, like sporting things I've ever done.
Yeah,
it was
Wrigley
amazing.
Field is cool too. Like,
and all of Wrigleyville is amazing. I mean, it's
so
it's a cool spot.
It's cool. And it's different than Anaheim. Like my wife and I, you know, when we were dating and when we were living just up the street from Angel Stadium, like you could get $5 Costco tickets and they were nosebleeders for locals, right?
Yeah.
And we just go in at like the third inning or whatever and maybe stay till, you know, the eighth, depending on what the score is, and, you know, go hang out at the Rock Garden or the, you know, bar basically. And, you know, just watch the game. So that was fun. It's just a different experience than Wrigley.
When you say LA baseball, what does that mean?
Well, it's changed a little bit over the years because the Dodgers have been so good for so long.
Yeah.
But like Anaheim, they have a good following, but it's most of the time it's this big push on the opposite side. Like there was more Red Sox fans in Angel Stadium than there were.
Isn't that
Angels
sad
fans.
for Ohtani? That's how you say it, right? Ohtani,
Shohei. Yeah.
He's like one of the best baseball players ever, and no one cares, and their team can't.
Well,
win.
the Angels had two. They had two.
Yeah.
Mike Trout and Shohei. And they had the machine, dude. They had oh shoot, I'm blowing his name. Pujols. They had Albert Pujols right at the peak of his prime.
Yeah.
Just missed it. They just missed it because he crushed for St. Louis. Like I think he took St. Louis to 2 World Series.
Yeah.
And he didn't show up for him, but they had him, Mike Trout. Then they brought in Shohei, and they still this year they're doing pretty good. I think they're sitting at 590. They're just short of 6.
Okay, so they're finally winning a little bit.
So they're winning a little bit this season. But the Rangers and the Astros are super good right now too. So it sucks because they're in this league that typically has some good players. But that's what I love about baseball is that it's a long season. A lot of things can happen. And sometimes you have great teams and sometimes you don't.
Baseball in person is a great experience.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's so fun. So tell me, you said you got religious in 2020. Mm-hmm. And so what drove that?
I don't know.
Do you go to church every Sunday now?
Every Sunday.
How long?
Or I'll listen. I'll listen to something on Sunday, but we'll do family time and.
So what did someone like say? Hey, you should do this, or like what? Was there something that happened in your life that put you on that path?
Mm-mm.
Just
Dude,
happened.
I was driving up to Cedar City one day, and thinking about a lot of things. But it's a culmination of education over years and years, and this constant need for wanting to know new things and know more.
Yeah.
And I had this overwhelming it was a breakdown, dude. Breakdown on the drive up to Cedar City. Driving back, called Sam, who he's actually my barber.
Okay.
To begin with.
Barber / therapist, that's what they are, because you talk to him for an hour all the time.
Yeah, and kind of, but I talk to people all the time. I mean, my job is to talk to people all day, right? So it was just another conversation that day for me, you know? But I called him. I was like, hey, are you at the church? And I wasn't even going to his church. We tuned in on social media a little bit, like the videos that they post, just like their sermons.
Okay.
And, you know, we had talked a couple of times about, you know, my beliefs and being a Christian kind of growing up. But yeah, it was a born again moment for me, man. I was like, are you at the church? So I went in. I can't remember all the stuff we talked about, but dude, it was just like in that moment.
What'd your wife think of that?
So when I left Sam, I canceled my appointment, told him that I just had a moment where, you know, it changed my life, and that I'm a
born again Christian.
Born again Christian. Yeah, exactly. The best way to describe it. And he laughed, and then we rescheduled the appointment for the next day. I said, I'm going to go home and talk to my wife. And he's like, okay. It was probably the oddest conversation he's ever had. And then I called a couple other people that were important to me in my life and talked to them about it, but then went home and spent the rest of the day with my kids and my wife.
And what did your wife think about? Because like that's a change, right? That's a shift in your guys'
dynamic.
A change.
It was a change. It was a shift, but it was one that was welcome. She grew up going to church, but in high school kind of dwindled off, stopped going. And then, you know, once we both hit college, because we met, I was 21 or 20. So we met when we were early 20s. And, you know, that wasn't a thing that we ever did. You know, we were together a long time, and church was definitely not something we were consistent about, but we also had kind of the foundational beliefs there.
Yeah.
But understanding them and actually applying them in life, we kind of have come together on them together. Yeah.
So I'll give you a wild story. This was, might have been 2020. No, it wasn't. It was 2019. My wife had gotten she'd kind of found her own path, and had met with some spiritual healers and was working on some past trauma stuff. And I don't know if you believe in that, spiritual healers. I don't know if that's really a Christian thing, or if that maybe seems a little bit witchcrafty to you guys. I don't know.
No.
Crystals and all that.
I think everything's pointing to Jesus anyway. So,
so I'm working with this spiritual healer.
Spirits are real. I believe in spirits.
So okay, perfect. So I'm working with a spiritual healer, to help her with her business. So Megan had met her, loved her. I went and did a session, which I was against, and then I had this really amazing thing, and I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. And I was like, I want to help you, because the problem with so much spiritual healers is because they're spiritual healers and they're very connected to that spirit space. They're not very connected to our space. Mm-hmm. And so they're bad at business, and they work for free, and they just they don't know how to do that part of life, you know? Yeah. So I'm like, let me help you, and let me get a branding thing set up for you, and let's put on this event. We put on an event at the Cliff Rose. McRae went to it actually. Mm-hmm. And so we put on this event, and so I'm in this space, and then I'm meditating, I'm doing all these things. And then one day, I'm asleep, my alarm goes off. It's 11:12 p.m. So I'd fallen asleep at 9:30 or something. My alarm goes off, and I'm wake up, what the hell? I would never set an alarm for 11:12 of any time, a.m. or p.m. That's not a time I would ever set for any reason.
Weird.
So I'm that was weird, and I had this weird feeling, and I was oh, I don't like it. I turn the alarm off. I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning. I have a same page meeting with Breck, and we're standing in line at Starbucks. I said, hey, and so I woke up. Actually, let me retrack. I woke up that morning, and I was I tell my wife, I said, I think Dale, who's Breck's dad, I think he came and visited me to give me a message. She's like, really? I was like, yeah. I didn't realize it in the moment, but now reflecting back on it, I think that was Dale. And we're going through the conversion with the Cliff Rose at the time. Mm-hmm. So I go to my same page meeting with Breck. We're standing in line at Starbucks. I go, hey, I got a question for you. He goes, what's up? I said, what does 11:12 mean to you? And he's like, oh, look at that. What are the odds? Breck is calling me right now.
Dude, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Odds are high, though, because you're close partners, but that's okay.
And so he's like, oh, dude, you're going to make me cry. And he's starts to get emotional, starts to cry. And I'm like, oh, what? I'm sorry, why? He's like, that's the day my dad died.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so I'm in this space. I'm really tuning in to this space. And so all these things keep happening to me similar to those things. Mm-hmm. And I'm it really kind of freaks me out. So I'm kind of I was ready to pull away. But so I did this meditation in my kids' room. I'm putting my kids to sleep. And I'm just listening to a guided meditation on YouTube. And I'm in this space. I'm doing my meditation. And then I am all right, God, what are we doing here? And I said, God. I didn't say universe. I said, God. I said, what are we doing? Like, give me a sign that, like, if you're for real, let me know. And all of a sudden, dude, it felt like a window open in my eyes are closed, but it felt like a window opened above me and like a presence was there. And I didn't dare open my eyes. I was too scared. Mm-hmm. But I felt it. And I was like, oh, I'm getting goosebumps now. And I was like, oh shit. Like, God, that's like, wow. I asked and he like delivered in a big way. And then I got like this light that like came down. It was like this stream of light. This is just what I'm seeing and my eyes are closed, right? Coming into my head. And there's like all these like floating things going around, like almost like hieroglyphics, right? Mm-hmm. Some sort of message. And then I start like floating up into it. And I am having like this truly out of body experience.
Are you doing breathing?
No,
exercises?
Dude. Like I'm just listening to a meditation.
Nice. Okay.
So then I go, like I'm floating up through this light. And then I get to what I would call like Penn Station. Like basically everyone's coming and going, right? And the way that I describe it is
platform 9 3/4.
It was, I don't know. It was the space between our realm and heaven.
Yeah.
And like people are coming and going. It's like a train station. Mm-hmm. Some people are coming down, some people are going up, like everyone's coming around. Mm-hmm. And my grandparents were there. And I remember like I couldn't see them, but I could remember like hearing them calling for me and knowing like, oh my God, that's my grandma. And then like eventually I snapped out of it, came back to consciousness, and I was like, and I wrote it. Maybe I'll show it to you after, because I went out in my backyard, put it down on paper right away, because I was
you're like, I need to know that this was a thing that happened for real,
and I need to remember exactly what it was that happened and when it happened and why it happened. And so even having that experience, I still call it the universe. I don't know why. I guess because I don't know which God it is. But
there's only one, my friend.
That maybe. So that was a really like powerful experience that I had. And so after that, it just kind of got like too much for me. And so I just stopped.
Stopped to what?
Like trying to be in that space. Like my meditations now are not spiritual based in any capacity. They're more about like, what's my day going to look like?
Okay.
Versus like a connection and a higher power. Kind of freaked me out.
That's interesting. Like when I think of meditation, I think of, losing or letting go of all control of all of the things. So like the idea that you're like thinking about your day, forward or backwards, that's you controlling in where your mind's at, versus where, the way I've been taught meditation, or at least the way I do it on a semi-regular basis, should be doing it more. But I've floated more into prayer versus like an actual meditation of it. But it's like just not thinking of anything. Trying to and it seems like that's like the space you went to is because you let go of everything. You were thinking of it. You were letting go.
And it's hard to not think.
It's so hard, dude.
So hard. So
especially for guys like us.
The meditation that I do is called the 6-phase meditation by Vishen Lakhani, and so it like takes you through all of these things, and that works better for me because I just sit there and try and like, it is so hard to just like commit to nothing. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty interesting. So wow, we're 45 minutes into this thing and we haven't talked about a particular topic yet.
Whatever you want to talk about, dude.
So a little backstory.
We could chop it up.
Oh no, this is great. I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. Little backstory. So you got a political science degree. So what was your ambition with that? Like going into it?
So I went to a military boarding school.
And
when I was
high
15,
school? Because you were bad or what?
No, so I grew up in Salt Lake, up in Sandy. Went to elementary school and middle school up there. And my uncle had gone to military schools his whole life. He went to St. Mary's, and then he went to this place called New Mexico Military.
And did he end up in the military as an adult?
He did not.
Okay.
He did not. So he went through military schools. He got out and he was an accountant, right? So in 8th grade, he asked if I would consider going to this military school. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. That doesn't sound anything like what I would want to do. My dad was in the Army. But in 9th grade, I got really good grades, but I didn't fit in. Like I could tell I didn't fit in for whatever reason. And so I told my parents one night that I wanted to go check it out. So
looking back now, do you know why you didn't fit in, or do you still just don't know?
I have a theory.
What is it?
I have a theory. I don't know if we got enough time for that. We could fast forward.
No shit.
We could fast forward.
Okay.
I think it was because I was small and I had a really big ego because I still have, that's one of the things that we try to slice up is the ego, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I had something to prove.
Yeah.
And other dynamics fit into that all in a culmination. But went to a military school. So it was a boarding school, only came home a couple times a year. And then during the summer, and met a bunch of, super smart kids from all over the world. And
probably got a lot of discipline out of that.
Got a lot of discipline. It was helpful for me because I was an ADHD, kid. So
gave you structure.
The structure is literally down to the hour every single day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was the best environment for my brain. And I did mediocre in school. I didn't think I had enough grades. I didn't think I did well enough in school to get into the Air Force Academy, which is where a bunch of, my friends wanted to go. It was like the Naval Academy or Air Force Academy or an Ivy League school. And I was like, my grades aren't as good as all the friends that I had.
Yeah.
So I didn't even apply. Just didn't even do it. Ended up going back for junior college there because it was a 4-year high school and the 2-year junior college.
Okay.
Early commissioning program.
So you spent a lot of years there.
It's 5 years. So I was there for 5 years. And then once I was done with JC, immediately transferred to Cal State Fullerton. It was just the easiest school. I was like, I know I'll get into this. So I just
was that school you're at also in California? That military school?
No, that was in Roswell, New Mexico.
Oh wow, aliens!
Yeah. And it was tiny town. It was like the population is similar to St. George. So in St. George, when we first moved here, I was like, man, this reminds me of Roswell. It's just like a beautiful Roswell because Roswell's a freaking just flat turd.
Flat desert.
Yeah, flat desert in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, so then Cal State Fullerton. Got into political science because it was the most interesting thing when I was in school, in high school. Yeah. I was always interested in those types of things.
Yeah.
And I liked political economy because I had an accounting class in junior college that I really liked. And I liked my microeconomics class that I took. So I thought, well, I like politics and economy and they kind of run together. I don't really like math and engineering. It wasn't my thing. So looking back, I probably should have gone into like economics or accounting, but did political science and then graduated, after 2 years. I took like 18 units every single semester.
Is that where you met your wife? Was at school?
No, we met working at a restaurant. So I was working at a restaurant.
In California?
Mm-hmm. I was going to school, taking between 17 and 18 units for 2 years. And I worked as a server just because I couldn't afford it, to do anything else.
Sure,
so
yeah.
I was getting up first thing in the morning and coming home at 2:00 at night and starting all over again the next day just to finish, because I wanted to get my degree and then just move on.
And did you think when you got your degree, you would use that degree as a profession?
I was going to go to law school. So then
you were.
I took the LSATs 3 times, couldn't get my average high enough to get into a tier 1 law school. And I had deduced in my head that if I can't get into a tier 1 school, it doesn't make sense to spend any money to go to law school.
Sure.
Which in retrospect was the right choice.
Yeah.
It was tough to say that I couldn't get into law school because my LSAT scores. Because my LSAT scores, I legitimately could not.
Couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it in the time allotted.
Got it.
So I'd take like the logic games because it's like different sections, and I could do logic games if I wasn't getting clocked. But as soon as you only had 40, like I think you only had 50 minutes or whatever to do that section, couldn't do it in 50. So I'd get a bunch wrong, and it would pull my score down.
How interesting.
Sucked, man. It was brutal.
Devastating at the time.
Well, because I was like I was going to college and also taking this, prep class, teaching me how to do this.
Yeah.
And studying,
that's a lot.
It's like 1:00 in the morning.
And that feels devastating at the time. I'm sure.
Bummed,
like,
man.
oh, I'm a failure now.
I was super bummed. So I just got into the restaurants and then started working as a restaurant manager. But I was going all the way back. It was going to go political science, law school, and I wanted to be a senator for whatever reason. I was like, that's interesting. That seemed like the best.
Do you have any desire to be in that politics in that realm now?
What if the day comes where I've lived enough of my life outside of that to where there's like a call to serve at a public seat? I like the position I'm in right now to just call it like I see it.
Yeah, and
not necessarily have to be the one in the seat. Yeah, to do the things that are just made by man and truthfully, like if I could, I just tear all of the governmental structures like down all the way, like
start over.
Ron Swanson, just slash everything.
Yeah,
it's just because there's so much that we've just pieced on to this Goliath of a disaster. There's so much garbage in government.
So then you're in the restaurant business. That's in California. So what brought you to St. George?
So my wife and I went to Thailand for our honeymoon.
Okay, cool.
And my parents had a house here that they were going to retire to. And we hatched this plan. We were going to get out of California and go on to something different. We were going to move to my parents' house in the interim to save some money.
Yeah.
And then we were going to go like teach English in South America or something. We wanted to go on an adventure because Thailand was so badass.
Right.
And then she got pregnant like 2 months after we moved here. She got pregnant. I was like, I guess we're staying. So we stayed. Like, do you want to take should we take the baby around, backpacking South America? And once the baby was there, we're like, nope,
no
we
way.
don't want to do this.
Did you did you transfer in your restaurant to St. George?
No, we quit. I quit everything. I was managing in Downey, California. And I just said, that's enough. I'm going to start over. I looked into real estate. I'd seen the business model and how simple it is. And you don't need a lot of, the only thing they didn't tell me is that you have to know people. For whatever reason, I missed that. I was like, no, you can just go get your license. You don't have to know anybody. But it's literally, if you know a lot of people, you should be a realtor because it's easy when you know some. I didn't know.
And so when you came here, you started being a realtor.
Yep, I started. So I was once she got pregnant, I went to Verizon, got a job, got health insurance. Told them as soon as I have my son, I'm not going to work for Verizon anymore, and they hired me anyway. I legitimately told that to the interviewer.
Wow.
And all they wanted me to do was be a manager because I had like
manager experience.
I had like 5 years manager experience at that point, and
so Verizon corporate over by Lowe's.
Yeah, over by Lowe's.
Nice.
Worked with Nick Rastoption. So Nick's a realtor as well, and now he is, but he was managing at Verizon. And the day my son was born, I gave them my tablet. I was like, okay, I haven't put in my 2 weeks. I'm gonna go take care of my wife. They're like, really? I was like, yeah. Okay, we'll see you later, Rob. And then that was it. I never went back.
Wow. How long were you in cell phones for?
Like 9 months.
9 months. I spent a long time in cell phones.
10 months. Yeah, dude, it's crazy. It's a weird world. I didn't like the pressure. It's a weird business model. Yeah,
it's all funky now. I don't even understand it now.
I know, but Elon's going to blow that whole thing up, right, with Starlink?
Who knows?
Because he'll just control the whole network.
So I was after the Nuggets won the national championship or the world championship.
Everybody doesn't trust 5G, and he's just like, I'll just beam it down from a satellite.
Yeah. So the Nuggets win. That's on what, Tuesday. So I'm out in my pool. We're celebrating, and all of a sudden I'm like, Kyle, it's a UFO. Like, oh my God, look at it. And
it's too much to drink.
I'm like, get your phone. No, dude, it was a UFO.
It was totally a UFO.
It was Starlink, but unbeknownst to me at the time. So I'm like, get your phone, dude, record that. It's a huge UFO. And so I'm like, call Breck, tell him to go out on his patio and look at this. So he calls Breck and he's like, go on your patio, there's a UFO. And Breck goes out there and I can hear him now. And he's like, guys, that's Starlink. I'm like, go back inside, dude. It's a UFO. We looked it up. It was Starlink.
It was Starlink.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
But it's gonna change cell phones all over again.
It's gonna change everything.
Change everything, dude.
Okay, so then you get into real estate, and then so you've been doing real estate for how long?
7 years. Year number 7.
Okay, so now you're doing an exciting new thing in conjunction with real estate with your podcast. Talk a little bit about that.
So I have a podcast, 435 podcast. It's just insider news on the local politics. That's it. That's where it's at right now.
And so when you're talking local politics, you're talking water, zoning.
Yeah. So from the mayors to the city council members, I interview all of the city council members for the St. George City.
Cool.
I interview 5 of the mayors in the county. So it's Santa Clara, Ivins, St. George, Washington City, Hurricane.
Okay.
So the big 5, so five city coalition. All the mayors are on it. The city council members. I'm going to be interviewing some of the candidates and doing some, 20-minute interviews for the 18 people that are running for St. George City. So it's just an insider, news radio show essentially, but it's a podcast now.
And so, what is you guys are on Instagram with that?
So we have Wealth 435 is my business.
Wealth 435. Okay.
Wealth 435 is the real estate side of things. The podcast is, giving value to my clients that live here, right? Say, hey, I want to help you stay in the know. Real estate's one side of it, but how many videos can you look at most realtors, right? They're like talking about anything but real estate, or they're talking so much about real estate. You're like, I need to mute this. I don't care about what house you listed this week, right? So I, looking at how am I different and just leaning into that. And
so if they want to search you on like iTunes or Spotify, that would be 435 podcast.
So the 435 podcast.
And what about on YouTube?
On YouTube, Wealth 435. I think if they do the 435 podcast in the search bar,
it'll come up.
The videos are going to come up because they're all titled 435 podcast.
So then
but I do housing market updates too there.
What's your thoughts on our political landscape like nationwide currently? Like what do you see happening?
It's increasingly polarized. We're continuing to pull towards a progressive left. And that's because they control basically all the levers at this point. And so the conservative viewpoint has now become a minority, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
In the country, and it's on a runaway train.
Is that because just the outside of the United States is so heavily populated? Because if you colored in all of the United States, don't you think it would still mostly be red? It's just that like Wyoming would be red, for example, but Wyoming has less people than one city in California.
Yeah, it depends on how you're measuring it.
Yeah.
Right? If you're measuring it based off population, it's overwhelmingly
if you were to throw a percentage on it, what would you say it is?
It's probably looking like closer to 57 to 60% of the country as a population is Democratic or left leaning.
Why do you think that is? Just because they drive the national media narrative?
Not because the progressive liberal is driven by the education system. And so over the course of generations, you have no choice but to continue to fall into the left, and it progressively gets more left, right?
Yeah.
And political ideologies, right? We can't help ourselves from doing that thing as a human that just keeps going on and on and on. And so when the federal education system was created, you end up with really clear lines of whether it's, you could call it whatever, a belief system that's going to just feed to the youth, right?
Yeah.
And so if the culture separates itself from the education system, you potentially could have a whole variety of viewpoints, but over time, the population has been dominated, both media and education system, by progressive left kind of leanings.
What's interesting too is
the only thing to pull it right is your religious beliefs, truthfully.
Yeah.
It's really the only thing that pulls people to the right.
So I just went to Denver 2 Mondays ago for Nuggets Heat Game 2 with Breck. And I grew up in Cheyenne, so Denver, 2 hours north. Like, that's where we spent all of our time as a kid. So, like, I had romanticized what Denver was. And I was like, Denver's so sweet, dude. You're going to love it. It's going to be awesome. We're doing this. We're doing that. And there's these guys, really cool, DNVR. They loved Denver sports, so they created a podcast because no one like nationally talked about them enough.
Yeah.
And that was so successful, they started making t-shirts. And then that was so successful, like, let's make a bar. So they made a bar. And it's like, I was like, I gotta go here. Like, they're the Nuggets people. That's where everyone's going to be. We go there. It's amazing. But on the way there, it's like all the buildings are boarded up and there's homeless people everywhere and tents. There was a lady with her pants down at her ankles. There's 2 homeless people fighting. And there was like this amazing mural of the Nuggets that I wanted to go see. And it's right on the same road, but it's by a 7-Eleven, which of like the 5 big windows that 7-Eleven has, 3 are boarded up. And Breck is like, well, this place is a dump, dude. And I was like, yeah, it is a dump. Like, this is so sad. Like, I wanted to bring my kids back here and do the things I did as a childhood with them. And there's this thing called 16th Street Mall, which is like just a main street that goes through downtown Denver that has all the outdoor shops. It's like really, really cool. And like the
Champs-Élysées in Paris, right? It's like there's always the street. There's the street in the city, yeah.
And so like the Rockies like flood into that, and it's just like this amazing place, and all of it was ruined. Mm-hmm. And it's like, man, people are seeing cities get ruined left and right, but like, what's it going to take for someone to be like, for something to happen where all of our amazing cities aren't being overran by just, I can't imagine anything else other than the terrible politics or allow that to happen. So like, there was this really beautiful park by the Capitol building. They had this little fence, like maybe 4 feet tall, like a concert fence, not a fence that would stop anyone from getting to the place that they wanted to be. And so we asked the Uber driver, like, what's up with this fence? And like, oh, they have to fence in all the grass areas to keep the homeless people out. And so what was interesting about that is like, obviously the fence isn't the deterrent. It's what happens to the homeless people if they go inside of the fence. So they're deciding to have consequences for crossing this little fence that like anyone could just step over. Right. And that works. So if a little tiny fence is enough to keep this part of the city nice, can we not just do that for the whole city?
Yeah, it's interesting, man. It's follow the money, I think, is always the question. It's like the answer to all the questions.
But what would be the money in letting homeless people run rampant in your city?
But where did all the money go?
What money?
That ran those cities.
Oh, I don't know.
Why are those people homeless and living on the street?
I don't know. Drugs.
That's what I hear the most of.
Yeah,
I hear that all the time.
All those people on the street were drugged out hard.
Exactly. And then you go to YouTube and you start looking at recent videos of any city in the country.
It's crazy.
So what happened? The United States, are we in denial about the fact?
Pharmaceuticals. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
But are we in denial? But I didn't even go to the pharmaceuticals. I went to like the political, what if 57 to 60% of our country is dominated by this progressive liberal ideal, right? And those cities are collapsing in on themselves that have been built by these progressive ideas. That's what happens in Babel. If you know the story of the Tower of Babel, right? Or like how we want all these things. We want to grow, develop, but we forget what are the fundamentals of city planning and what works in society and what doesn't, right? How did cities get that way? How did they get so big? How did they get to be amazing? And then how did they tip over and fall and collapse on themselves? Yeah. Right? There's a lot of different reasons, but COVID, man, was a revolution. I was looking back at my my photos because I was thinking you're going to ask me about my history. So I was like, oh, let me go run down memory lane. Yeah. So I have my first photos from 2012, and it's me playing Call of Duty at 2 a.m. with my feet up. I have a Banksy. I have a beer on the table and a Banksy book, right? Because Banksy's one of my favorite artists of all time, and he's doing a show in Glasgow, Scotland. And I was like, hey, Katie, you want to go to Scotland with me? I'm poor. I can't go. I wanted to go so bad. It's his first real expo from himself.
Wow, that's cool.
Anything else has always been stolen piece. Like, he'd graffiti on a wall and then they'd cut the wall out and then sell the wall. And then they'd put it in these galleries. Yeah. It's crazy. If you don't know Banksy, there's a cool history there. But I just thinking back, like where my life has gone. Yeah. And that always jumped out to me. I don't remember why I was talking about that. I don't know how.
Well, here's a question for you. So Biden's in office now, and obviously he is he's not equipped to lead anything, right?
He hasn't been. He's a puppet.
Yeah, and so then he's got
an octogenarian puppet,
and then you've got Trump leading the other side, right? Right now, he's like the Republican leader.
Hold on, he's leading the loudest voices in the room. Yeah, he's not. He may or may not be winning with the general public.
What do you think, if you were to say?
It's almost impossible to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Because we've fucked the whole thing up.
Yeah, so bad.
You got to bleep that out. Sorry, Mal. Like, it's so difficult for us to follow because of the Electoral College. Certain cities are in battle. You're in battle as a politician for certain cities and states, right? And it's a political map. They've made it a game, right? And so the idea that democracy is like, hey, my one vote equals one vote. It doesn't, right?
No, that's why I never voted ever for anything.
Right. And this is one of the reasons why I'm doing a Get Out the Vote campaign in Southern Utah, is because it actually matters at the city level. It doesn't really matter at the presidential level.
That's why I've never voted.
He's making massive impacts on the United States because of the decisions the country as a whole, as a general population, had given the president, and they mean a lot. But your vote in St. George, Utah, isn't going to matter. Like whatever we mail it in is truthfully not going to matter at the political side. On the presidential side, however, Chris Stewart's seat is going to be up for election, which is a U.S. House of Representatives seat. If you live in America, the most important people that you should be voting for is the senator, the congressman, the U.S. senator and congressman that are in your district, your governor, your mayor, and your city council members. That's all that matters. We get so wrapped up around the president. We need to strip him of his power. And a lot of people don't vote. Specifically because of what you just said. You're like, it doesn't matter. But it does matter for all those people that represent you. All those 6 people that I just told you, essentially.
That's interesting. So I remember when
that
Biden
matters. It's important.
Elected into office, we were in Kanab hosting the Southern Utah Tourism Summit.
Who?
When Biden got into office.
Biden, okay.
We were in Kanab hosting the Southern Utah Tourism Summit. So we're in a super red area. And so everyone's like all up in arms and everything. And I'm sitting at dinner with one of our speakers and he goes, what do you think? I said, I don't really care. So I've never voted before. My life was great when Obama was president. My life was great when Trump was president. I'm sure my life will continue to be great. I'm kind of eating those words a little bit because my life has actually, it's not as good right now as it was 2-3 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And not to say it's not good because it's great, but it's on a downward trend currently, which is interesting. And so I'm really now more, and I never was even into politics in any capacity. I never even spent one single minute watching a political anything ever. And then COVID happened and I was like,
you brought me back to where I got lost the last time. I'll come back.
So COVID happens and I'm like, shoot, I now feel obligated to get involved because I feel like something real bad's happening. So I better get educated. So that's the first time I ever stepped into like that sphere in any capacity. And I kind of wish I didn't. I'm glad I did because I got more educated, but also it's like, God, that's depressing, you know? Okay, go ahead. Go to your point.
So we were in a revolution. Like I posted a black square for Black Lives Matter in, 2020. It was June 2020.
Yeah.
And I posted the Juneteenth. KW had announced on, I think they were one of the first ones to adopt Juneteenth as like a
holiday.
As a holiday.
That's Monday, right? Coming up.
Yeah, Monday coming up. And I wrote in there about how we were in the midst of a revolution. And we went through a revolution in 2020, and it's almost like everybody's just like, oh, wait, what? We did what now? What do you mean? What revolution? And a lot of people don't realize that depending on what you believe, you lost. You know what I mean? There was losers. There was legitimate losers in that revolution that happened in 2020. And because the world is so fragmented, it's like been shattered. Yeah. Because we all went different places.
We're more segmented now than we've ever been.
Which is a biblical theme of the crashing down of Babel. Everybody was speaking the same language, and God came and mixed their tongues. So at one point, they all came with their own languages. They came together to have one language, and then the Tower of Babel fell, and God cursed the world with mixed languages again. So he reset the language, the way for us to communicate.
Created, segregation and
that created
controversy.
That created disorganization. Yeah. It created disorganization because with one language comes organization, and with the crashing down of that, because that we built the tower so high, and because man can achieve anything, which is biblical. Man can achieve. There's no limit to what they can do, is what it was said. He mixed the languages, right? Because it was supposed to be a simple life, right? He said, love your neighbor, be good. But that's not what we do when we build the Babel. We don't love our neighbor. We do all these horrible things.
Yeah. I remember growing up as a kid, like America being like, and I'm still proud of America, but everyone when I was a kid was proud of America. And it's like the American flag was amazing. And now people are like, oh, I'm triggered by the American flag. It's like, what the hell happened?
Yeah, man, it's crazy what happened in
like
just
the
such
American
a short
flag.
amount of time.
It's almost like the American flag became a symbol of the right.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's silly. Like that flag belongs in the middle. It's for everyone.
Yeah, this is give me your tired, your weary, your poor, huddled masses yearning to breathe freedom. That's on our Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, it's really sad.
And we have this weird thing at the border.
Like
with
at 4th of July,
this...
people are upset when people like flags on their trucks, and they're like, I'm so triggered, all these American flags. It's like, what?
Yeah, what is going on? So like we went through a revolution, dude. It's the craziest thing. And like now we're the men in the room. Honestly, I think that was probably the biggest weight that crashed down on me when I had my moment to my born again Christian moment. Yeah, it was this weight that I'm at 35. I'm now the
future of America,
the logical leader of America, right? Yeah. Like I'm of the same generation.
You've
where
got
we're
the torch.
We got the torch. They passed it, right? The millennials got it now. And
yeah.
I'm one of the oldest
terrifying.
Millennials. It's terrifying, dude. You too. We're like the oldest. We're at the leader point. And we're like, oh shit, we got to do this. We got to do this right, or we're gonna mess the whole thing
now
up.
We think matters for the first time ever.
Yeah, because I think the generation before us messed it up for America. Like we got to figure out a way that we can get back on the same page.
We've gotten off track. It's amazing.
It starts at the bottom. It starts at the local government. Truthfully, in my belief, it's like small to the bigger, right?
If an airplane takes off in LA headed to New York and it veers off like 1 degree,
oh shoot, this is a geometry I failed.
It'll land in Miami.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, 1
degree.
And
I think that's what happened. Is it's not like we moved 1 degree 20 years ago and just then never moved back. And somehow we ended up in Miami when we were supposed to go to New York.
We got off track.
You know? So, okay. So
Nixon
really
took
quick,
us off the gold standard too. So if you go back to it, it was Nixon taking us off the gold standard. We got off track, dude, in Vietnam. That's where we got off track if I was to pin it down.
That's probably true. So, okay. Before we get into a few quick questions, so you've got Biden,
we're like way past.
You got Biden in office. No, don't apologize. I love it. Biden in office, Trump as a maybe like the main adversary, but then you've got like Robert F. Kennedy in the background on the Democratic side.
I think the only thing Kennedy's only getting driven by Rogan.
He was on Rogan today. That episode
he was only on his constituency.
I think Kennedy's doing some stuff.
I know, but so he's but he's also not accepted by a huge portion of the left.
Of course not, because he's more middle.
He's not. He's so far to the left.
Dude,
still.
that's middle now, bro.
I know. That's the craziest part, man. Like, so if you want my opinion on it, I'm like, fudge. This is our other guy. This is our guy. You're telling me that there's not somebody, some human that's in their 50s that has seen life, agrees that we're off track and can't get us back on track. Robert F. Kennedy is the guy. That's it. And a guy who's clearly a robot? What is going on, dude?
So what would you rather?
Mess.
Would you rather have Biden, Trump, or Kennedy, DeSantis?
None of the above. I picked plan C.
Doesn't exist. Had to choose. Got to play the game.
So
Biden and Trump.
Biden and Trump.
That's one option.
Okay.
Kennedy or DeSantis?
Kennedy and DeSantis.
Yeah.
I'd pick that option.
Yeah. Then you'd want DeSantis.
I want an independent third party to stand up
So you don't want what's on the table at all. You just want to just wash the table away.
I want somebody who's the weakest person in the room. In the sense of I do not want anybody to progress the powers of the presidency one single more step, if not give those powers legally to Congress and give the power back to Congress.
Give power to the people.
They need to add delegates and representatives. And if they need to do a larger, the problem is our two-party system. And you're talking extremes here, right? There's like this will never happen. It's so hypothetical at this point.
Yeah.
Like if I bring it up to somebody that's in the game,
yeah.
who's a current politician,
never.
they're like, this is never gonna happen.
Yeah,
like forget about it. Don't even try. Right? That's legitimately, and all we're talking about is giving the power back to the freaking people of the United States. That's the limit to with which needs to happen. I think we should pull the rug. Every single, whether they're a senator or a House of Representative, they are no longer allowed to run again, period. Every single one of them are done. You pull the rug, everybody has to get switched out.
Well, and certainly you shouldn't be able to
system.
be in it until you're so old. Like if you have to be
term limits.
You have to be 35 to be a president. It's like you shouldn't be able to be more than.
I think it's 39 to be president. Truthfully, I think it's actually 45. 45 to president, 39 for senator, and then 35. Yeah, let's look this up real quick. But there's age limits.
There should be an age limit on the end of it too, is what I'm saying.
So yeah, or is it a cognitive test? Because there are guys like Donald Trump the amount of time in power, right, is the thing. It's like the amount of time within the system. Trump wasn't in the system, which is why he's having such a hard time.
Yeah, I get you. A cognitive test, because if you can, I guess that's true. I don't care how old you are. Just you got to have your wits about you.
Yeah, because I think there's some brilliant guys that, at 60 and 70 years old, or even 70 years old, young 70s.
Yeah.
There's some brilliant thoughts. So being the president, though, it's a different... You're just an executive that should be facilitating the jobs given to you by Congress. That's not what ends up happening.
Yeah.
They have so much political sway, and these two parties, they can't even agree to tell somebody that they've been breaking the law when there's actual proof that they've been breaking the law, and they can't resolve to agree that person has broken the law. Adam Schiff.
No, it's crazy.
It's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's bad.
Yeah. Give the power back to the people.
35. I knew it.
35 to be president. See,
look at me.
I don't even know anything. This is the other thing. I don't know anything about politics. Truthfully, like whatever I say, I'm probably wrong. Trust me. I'm doing a correct the record portion, because
that's fine.
When we talk about like winning the moment, we can talk about hypotheticals. But when you're sitting across
that's true.
the seat from a mayor,
yeah,
you could say some things wrong, and I'm like, I would like to retract that. I'm sorry, I didn't need to say that. And normally it's somebody tells me what I said, and I'm like, oh shoot. What minute was that? I need to go listen to that again, because I don't remember.
Yeah, that's true. You got a lot more burden to be accurate.
Yeah, there is a burden of the truth that is important with the job, but also why I feel like it's important enough that if I can do it and sell a few homes a year, so I can focus on, because there's no money in it. That's why the media is dying, because there isn't as much media in local politics, and as much there's not enough money in that power.
Yeah, right. No one
Newspapers
cares.
are dead. Spectrum's dead. St. George News and Facebook is where everybody gets their news.
And all they want to see is car wrecks and fires.
Exactly. Like everybody's attention is disorganized. So how do we get attention reorganized? The idea is the podcast. I got freaking segments on 12 different platforms trying to tell people what we're talking about. and it's tough to do. But
so let me ask
takes
you this.
time.
I usually would ask this before we get started, but we just started. Did you read Winning the Moment?
I didn't read it yet.
Okay, that's fine. You don't have
You're
to.
like, you dick.
I mean, it's chill. If you write a book, I'll read it for real.
I probably won't write a book.
Okay, so
I should read it.
So here's a question for you. What is your biggest win in your life?
I feel bad I didn't read your book.
Don't worry about it, dude. Reading's hard.
My biggest win?
Yeah, in your life.
Finding Jesus.
Okay. All right. Love that. So
Jesus called me, man. That's truthfully, I think that changed my whole life.
That's amazing. I love that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then what's your biggest loss?
Biggest loss.
Would it then just be losing Jesus?
I'll never lose him. Once you're found, dude. Once you're found, that's it.
You're done.
Yeah.
And biggest loss.
Once you're called, I won't go. You're like, I did not mean to talk about religion this whole time. I'm sorry, dude.
No, it's actually, I like it. So, okay. So biggest loss, just like I said, you get to define a win for you. You also get to define a loss for you. So there are no parameters.
My loss was going to, the funny thing is it's wrapped in a win. Going to Cal State Fullerton, I allowed my own lack of confidence in what other people were telling me was true, keep me from doing something that at the time was really important to me.
So maybe like you would have went to the Air Force had you not.
Yeah, the Air Force Academy, that ate at me for a long time. I literally backpacked Europe for 2 months by myself trying to understand, like, what was I even supposed to do? Like, just trying to figure out, like, this, it's so cheesy and corny, but I was like, I'm going to go find myself. I got a one-way ticket to Europe and then just backpacked Europe for 2 months.
Well, it's why I love that question, because I think every single person on this podcast so far, their biggest loss is, in fact, and with enough time, a win, right? Yeah. Because that's how losses work. And so I think that's the message I'm trying to share is we're going to lose all the time. Yeah. Like we're going to constantly be taking L's.
I really thought that was a failure, not going to the Air Force Academy. And so going to Cal State Fullerton felt like such a loss at the moment. And then now I'm all the way here and I'm super happy and I wouldn't have my wife and my 3 boys.
With perspective, everything's different. Just like your LSATs, when that happened, in the moment of failing, you probably felt like an utter failure. But now you're so glad you're on the path that you're on, right? And so I think that's the message for people listening is if you're going through one of those losses currently, it's not going to last forever. Yeah. Like there's going to be a win on the other side. So then the last question, this is really the most important one, but how do you define success?
Success is... Looking back, knowing that you really cared about the people you interacted with on a daily basis, and you served others, like feeling good about doing something good for somebody is probably my best high, right? Like the dopamine hit of like
being in service. So relationships and being in service.
Yeah, like success would be, for my obituary, people laughed and they remembered something really good in their life because of the interaction I had with them. Sure. I had a mentor tell me, I just want to be a chapter in as many people's biographies as possible.
Wow, I love that. That's cool.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to steal that because that was so good and helpful. So I've thought about that. It's like, how can I be an impactful human to the people I talk to and hang out with on a regular basis?
Did you want to be in service before you found Jesus, or is that a revelation of finding Jesus?
That was before Jesus.
Okay.
Before Jesus.
So he's already doing his work before he knew it.
Well, he called you before you were born, man.
Okay. All right. So then if people enjoyed today and they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
Follow the 435 podcast, hit subscribe. Engage with the content that we're creating out there. If you're on Instagram and Facebook, it's Wealth435 as the real estate side goes. So if you're thinking, I live in St. George and I want to follow the politics side, definitely follow the 435 podcast. And if you're just like, hey, I want to know what's happening in St. George from a real estate and development perspective, we give that as well. So like, either or. If you're wanting to connect with the local politics and find out, what does the mayor think and what are the city council members doing on a regular basis, follow me there. If you're looking for real estate help, man, I love to do that. Got lots of experience doing it. Really want to help people use real estate as a tool for their financial future.
Absolutely. It's one of the best tools that exist.
That's right.
Okay. Anything you want to leave the audience with before we wrap it up?
Nope. That's it, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for being here. It was awesome. I enjoyed it.
Yep.